welcome to another webinar. It's a series of RJ webinars that I'm doing to make the concept of restorative justice and what it can do to the justice systems and to individuals, make it more accessible. So yeah, if you haven't watched the previous webinars, some of them are on what is restorative justice, others covered the topic of gender-based violence, mental health. The last two webinars were about power, race and restorative justice, and this is a part of those webinars. I want to go back to the concept of power, and as I said in my previous webinar, I want to look at what I think are the three levers that powerful institutions and individuals use to control us, to control power. Now, don't expect everybody to agree with what I'm saying. I think my intention here is to kind of create a dialogue, which is the basic ingredient for restorative justice, but also to kind of increase awareness on how non-institutionalized and top-down approaches can help us, let's say, rebalance power or resolve conflicts. So as I said, this is part of a webinar series. This is on our YouTube channel. When I say on our YouTube channel, I mean the Restorative Justice for All International Institute. If you're not a subscriber, please do sign up because it helps the charity that is hosting it. And if you want to get a notification when there is a new webinar or a new video by the RJ4All Institute, just press the bell button and then you'll get an email when we've got new material. We don't charge for these webinars or these videos. These are all free. And it's part of what we do, and there's a lot of other stuff that you might want to check from our website and will come up on your screen, including projects and competitions, all sorts of things that the Institute is doing to help balance power in society. And that is our vision, that is our mission as an organization and as an international NGO. So, okay, so you're ready now. So I've been looking at this as part of a project that I started a few years ago, and it's called Race, Power and Restoration. And Routledge, you may have heard, it's a publisher. They're going to publish this as a book next year. So I'm not just talking from my head. I've actually read a number of case studies that were submitted from around the world, original case studies of power and restoration, but also I've done, I think, a bit of reading and research on the topic, and I've published in different journals and different books. So what is power? As I said in my last webinar, I don't dismiss the different approaches and the literature on power, which looks at it from different perspectives depending on the position that you're sitting. What I claim, and is very similar to what Foucault claimed, what he called biopower, is that we have this power in us. Everybody has the power. And for some people, the concept, the first thing that they think of is something bad. But without power, you can't make a change. It can also be a very good tool. And it's how we use that power. And we can exercise power for the good. And we can also exercise power for the worst thing that we've done as a humanity, take the World War II, for example, or the First World War. And it wasn't until we saw how capable we are and the atrocities that we could pull off that humanity actually started to come together and put institutions like the United Nations and conventions like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights or the European Convention of Human Rights. They put them together to be used as counter balancing the power that institutions or states are exercising on us as individuals or as communities that might not have as much power. So there is this effort. But then again, who is creating these conventions and who is creating these institutions and why they're creating those institutions? And these are the three things that are kind of boils down to, in my view, and I have experienced in different ways at a personal level, as somebody who comes from a community that is still divided. In fact, it's the only European country that is still divided into two, so I kind of grew up with these community tensions. But also the stuff that I've been reading and the stuff that I've been listening. And And the first kind of lever that I think is one of the biggest levers and a myth is the exercise of control through what I call financial terror. And what do I mean by that? So many human rights activists will say that poverty and the way that we distribute wealth, or the way wealth is distributed, is the main consequences of power monopoly, and it is what is causing the most serious human rights breaches. And just if you look at, just take the UK, it's a one of the top powerful countries in the world, a very prosperous Western civilization, and then you just break down the statistics when it comes to wealth, and the top 10%, their net household is over £900,000, so that might be like kind of over 1 million euros, which is almost 100 times higher than the net wealth of the poorest, which is £8,000 or even below. That kind of gives you kind of a bit of an understanding. So if those 10% have that, then why would they not keep it? And what would they do to keep, this division that we all kind of not processing and are aware of? Well, it's by reinforcing the fact that there is poverty and there is not enough. So, there's just crumbs that we all have to fight for. Well, unfortunately, that's not true. So, I would say fortunately, that's not true. Because if you look at the resources that we have in the world, and there's scientists saying this, there's authors, I'll put a few on the screen, there's books that have been written about this. There are more resources in the world for everybody. But what there is not enough in the world is for everybody's greed to be satisfied. So that's two different things. Whether there is enough resources and wealth for everybody to live a happy life, which is what the outcome is, and what we all want, there is not enough to be on the 10% that I mentioned before. So to be in that position. So how do we maintain that as somebody who is in the 10%? Well, it's by creating a vicious circle of defeatism for those who are not part of the 10%. Because if the resources are there, then it means that you can pursue them. Yeah? And if you can pursue them, it means that you're awakened, you are aware of that, and that you believe in your abilities as an individual, as a community, as a state, to liberate yourself from that domination and pursue that portion. Okay? So, what has been done, and I can give you many examples, is the creation of a defeatist attitude for those who are not in the 10%, thinking A, there is not enough resources, but B, and more importantly, they're not good enough for those resources. So, we had the recession. We are now just going through COVID-19. The recession that we're going to see will be unprecedented. Everybody's comparing with kind of the Second World War recession. We haven't been out of our homes, look at my hair, for 4 months. We have closed our businesses. It's going to be bad, okay? But ask any young person right now, and they'll tell you that they're not special. Ask any first-year psychology student, and they'll tell you that the most powerful thing for you to change yourself is first that you believe in yourself. If you take that away from somebody, there is nothing you can do. You can put all the sorts of legislations in place, you can do affirmative programs, you can do voluntary programs, you can pay for people to go to work, you can create grant schemes, funders might just throw money to charities and all that to rebalance whatever opportunities and give, or call them disadvantaged young people, whatever it is. That's my belief. If you don't believe yourself that you can do it, and you don't have confidence that you can do it, you will never. All those things are just down the drain. So the lever is just about taking that belief out of people's hearts and out of people's minds, and making them believe that they don't have that. And I see it in, how do you get a job? You have to wear certain clothes, you have to drive a certain car, you have to look in a certain way, you can't be looking or sounding in a certain way. All those sort of things create a defeatism, because they're saying, I'm not, I can't speak posh English, I can't go for a lawyer's job, or I'm a migrant, I can't set up my own business, or I'm a woman, or I'm not wearing the right clothes, I need to go and buy the right clothes. And then this kind of psychology of defeatism grows, and then it puts you in a position to say, well, lost cause, what's the point? And that creates this vicious circle that I'm talking about. And that is consciously, not subconsciously, is very consciously created through the system, through the educational system, through the justice system. And it's not about looking at the individual and what they can offer for what they are and the talent that they have. And believe me, everybody has a talent. I have a talent on, speaking for England for forever, writing stuff. I enjoy, that's my talent. I enjoy writing. Somebody else might enjoy, be really good in playing football. I got no clue how to play football. Everybody has a talent, to be a carpenter, to do whatever. So how do we find that talent and tap into it and support it, as opposed to say, okay, they've done, let's just take young people again as an example, they've done something bad, and we look at them as problems, as offenders, we label them as offenders, so we have to put them into treatment programs, or just minimize that risk that they're creating as problematic individuals. Why is it not the other way around? And this is a fact. The criminal justice system, the youth justice system, just to keep one offender in a youth offending institution, we don't call them prisons anymore, but in a youth offending institution, costs £180,000, just to keep them in an institution for a year. And that doesn't cost, is not including the cost for, prosecution, the police, or the previous stages, or after, with probation. That's just to keep them in prison. Well, ask yourself, how much is it to be in a university for a year, in the best university? Even the countries like the UK that charge for universities, is it £100,000 a year? No, it's not. £10,000 tops. And yet we're spending as taxpayers £180,000 a year to keep a young person in an institution that probably is going to come out and be a better offender or a criminal. Why are we not looking at it this way? Because that's how we control the power. That's how we keep that power of the 10% in that box, and not allowing the potentials, the real potentials that are out there, to share what I said before, the resources that are enough, more than enough, for everybody to enjoy a happy life. Okay, I'm going to move on to the second lever for controlling power, and I know that we can stay there forever and talk about it, but I just want to cover the basics, and then if you want to have a debate, just drop us a line or just put a comment under the video. So the second lever, and I'm not going to talk a lot about this because I'm going to create a specific webinar, is about what I call security terror. And that got really, really bad after September the 11th, when we saw the Twin Towers coming down and say, oh my Lord, the biggest power in the world suddenly has got, these terrorists just attacking the biggest power in the world. So we've got to do something about it. We've got to, forget about human rights, set up systems in place and legislations that take away this protection layers when they should, and give extra powers to the executive or the police or whatever it is, so that we can control these bad people. And there is a lot of narrative behind it. And now, I talked about September the 11th. We had bombings in London. We have all sorts of reasons and different causes for what we call radicalized behaviors that may lead to violence. And I did write about this before. I don't consider myself being radical a bad thing in itself. In fact, many nations, including the country that I came from, were liberated because of radicalized individuals, and they raised against the power of bigger states and more powerful states to liberate themselves and establish their independent states. So by default, any young person should feel to some extent to be radical in their views and in their approaches. What is bad is using radicalization for violence and hurting others, whether it's physically or psychologically, you name it, through that violence. That's the bad radicalized approach. And why I'm mentioning this as a lever? Because there is a lot of narratives, usually tapping into one main area, which is religion, and capitalizing on those fears, so that we feel that we are under attack all the time, and that we need to accept the minimizing of the standards that protect us and that were created to control that power. And I mentioned human rights before. Democracy, democratic states, the participation of people in healthy elections and in having real debates is all about controlling that power. It's all about finding the rebalance that we need all the time, not every year, every day, every moment, to control the power that is exercised by default, by institutions, by individuals that have this power. So by creating that fear, that terror, and I'm not saying that there are not attacks. I will put some statistics that will probably shock you in relation to, and this came out from an official body of the European Commission, about how many terrorist attacks we had in Europe, and how many we thought we had, and which country, guess, had the most, and you won't be surprised to hear, well, that the UK had the highest numbers of terrorist attacks, and the worst of all, the highest numbers of deaths because of terrorist attacks. And I ask you, which of all the European country member states have the most draconian and the most advanced legislation against terrorist acts, and which is the country that has negotiated the human rights standards and also even threatened to come out of the European Convention of Human Rights because they are preventing their anti-terrorism legislation and the policies and the strategies? What is the UK? And yet, look at the statistics and what is happening in the UK in relation to terrorist attacks and terrorist deaths. We have to reflect on that. We can't just be accepting it, watching the news, and just saying, yeah, that's the truth, and accept it as part of our reality. Like the first lever, it's kind of subconsciously making us feel that we're not good enough. This one as well, again, it just subconsciously makes us feel that we're under attack. We accept, the watering down of those standards. And I'm not just talking about the legalized standards that you can find them in conventions and in laws. Human rights are not about the laws, just about the laws. It's about the principles. This is what is behind the law. The principles like of dignity, respect, fairness, equality, involvement in decision making. And we're all accepting that those principles can just be forget about them. They're not important because we need to protect ourselves, and that's more important. Well, I didn't say not protect ourselves, but have a look how other states are doing on other not so top-down approaches. With community dialogue and negotiation, you can achieve, whereas this way is leading to what? So just a food for reflection. So the final lever, because I'm getting very close to my time limit, is what I call nationalism or imperialism. And, in the past, we had kind of more prominent examples where, a country would just, with imperialistic intentions, would just go and create colonies or, take over. Now that is a little bit harder because we did set up, as I said before, institutions that will just kind of say, you are attacking, you're breaching international law. You need to be brought to the to the table. Like, we need to discuss this. So it's not that easy to attack. I'm not saying that there's no these sort of expressions of imperialism, but there are other kinds of expressions that are similar to the other two levers, which are subconscious. And I'm just going to take the lovely example of Brexit. Yes. So, and I know that some Brexiteers, when are watching this, will be like, oh no, another one. Well, I'm sorry, I am a European, and I do think, the Farage narratives and what's been happening, when you look at statistics, with, let's say, the migration problem, the refugee problem, you actually realize how untrue those narratives were and where they led in relation to putting this country in a position that said, well, actually, we're so powerful, we are so able to be independent and out of Europe, that actually we're going to come out of Europe and we don't need the European Union as an intended union of states that, following the Second World War, said, not again, not anymore. We're going to have this attitude, and we need to come together for whatever reasons, financial, you name it, political, and make sure that together we're making decisions for the better, not of our nations, but of us as Europeans. And I'm not saying that while doing that, you're not also benefiting your own nation. Yes, you do. But why differentiating, my color, my background, my whatever, sexual orientation, my gender, to say, I am this, so that's why I need to be better. I am better, and I need to be in a better position. No, we're all Europeans. We're all the same. And by looking at it in that way, we actually challenging those who have the power. And that's why these narratives of nationalism and imperialism are very, very dangerous when it comes to being able to express your own power. And that's why I think it's the third lever, the first way that the 10% is trying to control the power and keep the power. As I said, this is uncomfortable discussion to have, to discuss power. And as I said, we all have this power. We have it within us. And it's about acknowledging that, watching yourself having that power. Is not just the 10% that exercise power. Everybody does that. And it's a subconscious, automatic, almost like an instinct that human beings have. And it's about accepting that, realizing it, become the watcher of yourself. And then once you have that awareness, is how you control it first within yourself, so that then you can become a voice and a vehicle for rebalancing power in society. Thanks for watching this, I know, very uncomfortable webinar. Do sign up to our webinars and subscribe to our channel, please. If you want to get a notification, press the bell button. And also, I really value your feedback, and I'm trying to improve these webinars so that they're a lot more kind of fun and interactive for you. Thank you very much.